is Breaking Bet. Welcome back, everybody. Week 6 NFL action here on this Wednesday, October 9th. Yes, we have MLB playoffs going. Yes, this has been one hell of a postseason in the major leagues, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about that on Friday. For now, we're going to be talking about the NFL breakdown of Week 6, but to do that, I got to bring in my guy, as usual, Mr. Eric Pauly. What's going on, Slime?
What's going on, Johnny? Always a pleasure to be here. Obviously, indulging some playoff baseball, but can't keep the eye off the NFL markets ever. Obviously, tons of injury news, tons of pretty good matchups this weekend. Not necessarily like games you'd be like preseason like dying for, but a game like Green Bay, Arizona, like that's going to be a fun one. Like obviously Baltimore, Washington, that's going to be a fun one. So excited for the slate.
Yeah, and before we dive into anything specific, is there a favorite look that you might have for Week 6, or a certain trend that you're noticing that you want to take advantage of?
So the one thing I will mention, you know how I felt or feel or still feel about Robert Saleh and him as a coach. Obviously, he's let go of the Jets. That number is moved in the Jets' favor now, and I think that I don't have the number exactly in front of me, but there is definitely a coach fired and new coach coming on. A little bit of a bump there, a new head coach bump. So the Jets become interesting. I've shied away from betting so often on Mondays and Tuesdays. I've tried to bet more Wednesdays and Thursdays. Still try to beat the market, but not be so early. I don't have anything locked in just this second, but I ran all my numbers. I'll bet something live on the show, honestly, because I'm sure you'll help me convince me. I do have my numbers already ran with injuries updated, so we'll talk through those. And right now, nothing that I'm dying to bet, but we'll talk numbers. We'll talk everything. What about you, Johnny?
Something I would like to address is obviously, somebody that has given you the best betting trend in the NFL, in NFL history, in the Royal Mint. I stand by my product. I guarantee it, just like Frank Lucas did with Blue Magic. I think now we're getting to the point where it's starting to become more noticeable, at least this season, with what these 5.5 point plus dogs are doing this year, not just covering spreads, but winning outright. And, unfortunately, there's people that are giving this out and not really, acknowledging the Royal Mint as it pertains to JohnnyVTV. Maybe I'm a little bit egotistical. Like, I won't deny that, I am what I am. But the thing here is, on Monday night, the Saints were the 5.5 all week. It was Royal Mint start to finish. And I got nervous because I saw so many people on Monday night, Sunday night, talking about the Saints plus 5.5, Saints money line, Chiefs missing Rashee Rice. They're not looking good. Saints need this one, all these excuses. And listen, the thing about the Royal Mint, I've always said this, it doesn't always hit, but it hits a lot more times than it does. It's very profitable. So you ran into one where it didn't hit, and honestly, it wasn't particularly close. Now we're in a position here where we do have a Royal Mint this week, and that's where we're going to start, E. We're going to go with the Arizona Cardinals catching 5.5 at the Green Bay Packers. The Royal Mint itself has not only been profitable, but Arizona as a team crushes this spot. I remember last year, perfect example, they were 5.5 at the Texans when the Texans were starting to groove. And I loved the Cardinals. They lost by 4 or 5 on the dot, but I remember they had a couple chances to win that game. There was a few things that didn't go their way, but they ended up covering. It was a 2-unit play. And, I really love certain teams in this spot even more than the number itself. And Arizona is one of those teams. So for me here, you have a Cardinals team that pulls off a monster upset when they were down, I think, 14 points late in the game against the 49ers, which is a matchup they've had trouble with in the past. Now you're going to Green Bay, a team who, they've managed to weather the storm with losing Jordan Love, and Malik Willis did his thing, what got them to 2-0. Love looked good in Chuck mode against the Vikings, a game that they obviously lost. And the Packers didn't really play that well against the Rams overall. That was a game that they should have blew them away, and they kind of let them hang around. The one concern I would have, and I would like your opinion, do you think the Cardinals come to play here, or do you think this is kind of a letdown spot after a monster divisional win?
So I think the Cardinals come to play. I think that you can't overlook, obviously, massive wins. NFL is a very big overreact, underreact type of league, and especially the market. But I think this is fairly priced. I make this game, I make it actually 6.5. So I did see some value in Green Bay, and I do now at 5. But with that being said, I'm not sold on my Green Bay number because obviously you have a little, Malik Willis here. You have some Jordan Love. Of course, I have it adjusted for Jordan Love, but we have to make sure he's correct injury-wise, etc. But I don't really anticipate this as much of like a letdown spot for Arizona, in the sense of yes, they have this major win, but we know how divisional games go in the NFL, and that's not a situation. If Arizona would have went and beat the Lions or something, I would expect more of a letdown. And truth be told, the reason the Cardinals won was more about the Niners' inefficiency in the red zone than Arizona being this amazing team. Obviously, we know who they are. I probably didn't upgrade them enough, but at the same time, I don't think this is a letdown spot, Johnny. I think this is a spot where it's fairly priced, and the market has shifted. I see a 5 now, more in support of Arizona. So I definitely do agree with that move, though my number is off now. But again, there's always adjustments I do all week long. Maybe I missed a piece of info, but I make it 6.5. So I do see some value now at Green Bay at this point, but not something I'm dying to run and put on the card.
The one issue that I also have had with the Cardinals, and I've said this so many times over the last 3 seasons, they're the highest variance team in the NFL. When they decide to come to play, they will beat anybody, anywhere, anytime. When they don't want to play, it can get ugly. But I'm always going to bet this number, 5.5. I do like Arizona. I think there's some concepts that they're running right now that can definitely get past the Green Bay defense that got lit up by Minnesota's offense. Jordan Love and this Packers lineup, I expect them to do their thing. Jaden Reed is really blossoming. He's turning into a star and a real matchup nightmare. Josh Jacobs has been solid overall this year. Jordan Love is a very good up-and-coming quarterback. I don't think he's at that next level yet, but he's getting there in real time. We're seeing it. So I obviously am going to take the Arizona Cardinals 5.5. But, I expect this number to move. I don't think it's going to be like the Saints Chiefs from last week where it's going to stay 5.5 all week. On FanDuel, which is where all these odds are provided for, Cardinals are minus 114. So if that starts taking up a little bit more, you might see a 5, maybe even a 4.5. To tell you the truth, if the line ended today, obviously I'm taking the Cardinals, but I want to see where it comes closer to kickoff time when the line actually closes.
No, definitely. I actually have a question for you, Johnny. So obviously, I know that you talked about this last week, how you're looking to place that Royal Mint right before kickoff to confirm it is the Royal Mint. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's actually more pertains to back to that Saints game, which we could see something similar in this spot here. Does it? I want to say, I feel like more, and you can correct me, of course, if I'm wrong. I feel like more of the Royal Mints develop as the week goes on, where they open at 6 and then come down to the 5.5 or 6.5 and come down to the 5.5. Obviously, we're not going to say one spot where the Saints don't cover and win the Royal Mint is going to say the Royal Mint doesn't win. Obviously, nothing is perfect, but is it different when it's already in that range from the beginning versus when it is bet into that range into the market? If that makes sense.
That's a good question. No, that's a good question. To be honest, I've tracked a lot of Royal Mints throughout the week, over the last however many seasons. And even when a spot opens at 5.5 and it stays there all week, it's still good. As long as it closes at 5.5 or 5, I'm good. Obviously, 5.5 is better than 5. I feel like 5.5 has had more success than 5, but either way is still good. And no matter how it closes, it's still good. I mean, it's a thing where it's almost like roulette. I don't know if you or anybody listening is a big roulette guy, but the way I was taught by my dad when I was when I was younger, was when you're betting roulette, you stick to one color. Even if you see black, red, green, black, red, black, green, whatever the case is, if you're a black, you stay with black. If you're a red, you stay with red. So that's it for me in terms of applying this number to that philosophy of roulette, is staying with the 5.5 as long as a closer. The only time that I didn't take the Royal Mint in a recent memory was 2 years ago when Sam Ehlinger for the Colts was starting at New England, knowing what Bill Belichick does to rookie quarterback. That was the only time I was very vocal about not taking it. Otherwise, as long as the spot is there, no matter how it gets there, by the time kickoff happens, I'm grabbing it.
Understood.
And by the way, this one might be a 2-unit play for me because knowing how variance-filled Arizona is, this is a spot where I could definitely see them going into Lambeau and win outright. I mean, the thing is, they're not going into Lambeau in December. This is mid-October. It's still relatively warm out. They're not having to deal with this 20-degree weather that I've seen. Even in the 50s, it's still definitely manageable for this Cardinals team. And, the funny thing is, we're going to be getting these spotty performances from Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know why they didn't throw to him as much last week. I know there's a couple passes he should have caught, but he only had like 6 or 7 targets in a game where, they were having to throw a decent amount. It was Michael Wilson and Trey McBride that was getting more looks. So there's going to be these random times where Marvin Harrison disappears, but then comes back in a big way. And I think this is going to be the latter.
No, I get it. It's just, like you said, Arizona's high variance. They play Washington. They look like dog shit. They play the Niners, obviously a better team. They put together a fundamentally good performance. Though I, again, do, if you look at that box score and you watch the game, you do see the Niners' inability to cash in the red zone, settling for field goals or just turnover on downs, turnovers, and not getting 6 or 7 and only getting 3 ended up biting them. But no, this Arizona team is a team that I was not down on, but compared to like everyone thought they'd be so good because they ended last year great with Kyler. They had Marvin, another year in the Gannon system. But with that being said, it was a team that I wasn't anticipating to like take a massive leap. So what we've seen from Arizona so far is essentially like really right in my prior, thoughts on what they would be as a football team so far through 5 weeks.
Absolutely. And let's go to the team that they beat this week. San Francisco, short week, traveling up to Seattle, 3.5-point favorites at the Seahawks. Eric, the Seahawks have lost 2 in a row. They lose to the Lions on Monday night in Detroit, which is a tough place to play. But then they come home for what's supposed to be a gimme against the Giants with no Malik Neighbors, and they lose outright. Their defense has looked terrible the last 2 weeks. On Sunday against the Giants, they couldn't get off the field, despite the fact that they didn't give up a lot of points, but they barely had the ball because their defense could not get off the field. And San Francisco has not looked strong this year. You have a loss at Minnesota, which I still think isn't as strong as what they've shown. I think regression's coming from Minnesota. But then you lose a game to the Cardinals where, you figure you're going to get that win. Would you lay the 3.5 with San Francisco?
So I obviously adjusted my numbers. Like the Niners losing to Arizona the way they did, and especially how they've looked this season, I have not downgraded San Francisco that much. Like, again, their offense is still humming. They're dealing with injuries. Things like red zone inefficiency is not something I'd expect to continue from a Kyle Shanahan offense. So yes, it hurts without CMC. Like obviously, like Jordan Mason's been great in his stead, but like lacking CMC, especially in the red area, like we see how important that is. Like he's a weapon. Like running backs, it don't matter. Weapons are people you want on your football field as much as possible. This is the question that it comes down to when you're thinking about Seattle. They've been dealing with so many injuries on their team. Like Abraham Lucas, their tackle's been out. Jarek Reed, the safety's out. Defensive tackle Cameron Young is out. Hopefully Byron Murphy's back this week. Derek Hall, linebacker. Reek Woolen, questionable. Julian Love, questionable. Like their defense has been dealing with a ton of injuries, especially on the DL, starting that game in Detroit. So that was a situation where I don't really want to run to downgrade Seattle because these injuries are so impactful. Like you lost your entire starting defensive line, essentially. Like, it's going to be really hard to come back. But then they laid an egg against the Giants, and the pass rush really got to Geno. The defense couldn't stop shit, like you said, which was really the key thing. Maybe I haven't downgraded Seattle enough, but I only make this game San Francisco -2. So I see clear value in Seattle plus 3.5. That said, it's not, again, a team I'm running to get to the window with because of this defense. As long as they're injured, like this team is not going to be able to perform to nearly the levels that we expected from this Mike Macdonald scheme. And like I just mentioned, I think the 49ers are more than okay. So I think that this 3.5 for the market, I always respect the market, is, probably better in line than mine just laying 2.5. Because again, that key number of 3 is there. So it's clear value from my numbers on Seattle getting that 3 and a hook. But right now, nothing official. But I could be a sucker and I could be a fool, especially as I back Seattle in 2 straight weeks, and then there'll be a 3rd straight, and I lose, and I like watch them be bad. But I really lean Seattle here.
I'm going to be opposite. I like the 49ers. I like the bounce back. I don't think they're going to lose again. See, I know me and you had Seattle as a team that was going to sneak in the wild card, and I still think that could happen. Obviously, missing all those key defensive players. Cluster injuries are big. Typically, when you miss one defensive player, even that's noteworthy, unless it was Aaron Donald, who really was one of the few guys on defense that can move the line on it for an NFL game, it doesn't really matter. But when you're missing clusters, when you're missing groups of guys known as cluster injuries and they're key players, then that does matter. And we don't know what's going to happen with Seattle here, but nevertheless, a thing where that it's not to the Royal Mint standard, but I like laying 3.5s. That to me has become, at least for this season, one of the more profitable lines to lay in a game where lines get so sharp so quickly. It's hard to find an edge. And if you've gone back and looked at all these games that have pretty much ended in a 3.5 point spread pregame, the only one offhand that I can remember that didn't hit was Miami week 1. I think otherwise they've all come home. So I like betting the 3.5. I think there's a thought process where bettors are like, wow, it's a close game. You're getting not only the key field goal, key 3 points, but you're getting the hook too. How can I not take that? So I think a lot of times I like to go the opposite because, it doesn't end up mattering. You've seen a lot of these 3.5 lays, and it's a lot of these games aren't particularly close. They're win with margin. And you look at Washington, Cleveland. We had this conversation last week. So I'm going to say San Francisco bounces back and wins this one because, like you said, they have a system that is designed to succeed over the course of a season. Yeah, you're going to have a couple outliers, which is what Arizona was. But to be honest, I think they're gonna get back to business here. Kyle Shanahan rarely puts up 2 duds in a row, and that's what their offense did. And honestly, a thing that might have cost them against the Cardinals was losing Jake Moody, their kicker. They opted to not kick a field goal, which might have won them the game in the second half when they lost Moody. They went for around like 4th and 8, and it would have been like a chip shot field goal. So now that they brought somebody else in. I do like San Francisco here. I'm not running to the window just yet, but if I'm picking a side, it's going to be the Niners.
So the one thing I will say, just about like the 3.5 thing, like, of course we could use any like examples here you could find, but like Cleveland, like you bet the 3.5, right? Like it closed 3. It's not like it closed 3.5 and it sat there. Like it was a situation where, for whatever reason, the market, myself included, we were on the Browns plus 3.5. It closes 3. I think that what you're saying. Like if it's Sunday morning and it's a 3.5 and as a square better or a rec better, you wake up and you see like, oh, it's 3 plus the hook. I'm taking it because I'm getting the 3 plus the hook. That's different than betting a 3.5 on Tuesday and the line closing 3 on Sunday. Like, for example, like say you laid the 3.5 early in the week with Cleveland, with Washington. Obviously you wanted any fucking number. It didn't matter, but you still made, in terms of the market, a bad bet. Like when you're trying to get that hook, or you're deciding between laying, like getting the 3.5 or just passing on the game, like it's important if you're getting that 3.5 early and the game closes 3 later versus the day of the game or an hour before the game taking the 3.5, because that's when the market's telling you they don't really care about that half point. But if you bet it Tuesday at noon and then by Tuesday at 8 p.m. the 3.5 is gone, you got the 3.5. And yeah, you still lose, but it closed 3.5. You still made a good bet. It's the NFL. Shit happens. These lines are hyper efficient, and things do come down to coin flips. But it's different. There's a difference between betting a 3.5, getting closing line value, than betting a 3.5 right before a game, a plus 3.5, where it's just like, yeah, the market is telling you they don't care about the hook because the hook's still there.
I understand what you're saying, but typically what I like to do is just try to bet the numbers. Obviously, closing line value is like become something of like a cult. Closing line value doesn't mean shit. On paper, it's nice. It means what?
I could not disagree with you more.
I've seen so many times where guys, bettors have gotten an unreal number, and they got and their bet got completely destroyed. Like over the course of a career, yes, you want to try and get the best of the number. That's just it's an advantage. It's a small advantage that you can get is getting the best of the number. But if I'm going to sit here and say, "Oh, I'm a closing line value king," where I'm taking a play at 6 and the line moves to 6.5 over time, yeah, that might help you. But to be honest, I've seen so many times where the closing line value doesn't mean a damn thing, and that's with other sports as well. But obviously, the NFL is different. But the NFL, I've seen it a ton this year, where you lay the 3 and it moves to 3.5, and it didn't matter because the team got blown out regardless.
I literally tweeted on Sunday, I have closing line value on all 3 of my bets. I wonder how all 3 of them lose, and I lost 2 of them and won 1 of them. And that was said in jest because the point you said initially that over the course of a season, year, career of gambling, it's undeniable that the more you beat the closing line, the more likely you are to win. That is undeniable. On a game-by-game basis, you're going to have wins, you're going to have losses when it's not going to matter. But yes, in terms of gambling, the more you beat the market we're talking about a long period of time. We're not talking about a sample of even one football season if you're only placing 100 bets over the year. We're talking about like a career here, a betting career. And that's a hill I'll die on. You're clearly not debating that because you said that. But yes, like at an individual basis, if I'm sitting here and I bet, Seattle +1 and now they're +3.5, should I, go cry because I have a shitty ticket? Like, no, it could still win and that would be dope. But at the same time, yes, the goal long term is to beat the market.
It's always the goal. But again, it doesn't always matter. It doesn't end up sometimes. It does
not always matter. But long term,
there's 1,000 elements that factor into, where a game lands. 1,000, and a lot of them aren't even in players' control anymore because the refereeing has gotten so bad. That's a different conversation for another day. But it is what it is. Eric, one thing that is firmly in the control that how much I absolutely can't stand is these games overseas. And we have another one. We have another game. I'm pretty sure it's in London. Is the Bears as a home favorite losing a precious home game in today's NFL as a 1.5-point favorite to the de facto London team of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We can get into why I can't stand these abroad games. I think they're terrible. They're nothing but a money grab. The product is absolute horse shit. But that being said, where do you lean in this game? Do you think the Bears build on what they did? Are you fading Jacksonville, even though they barely squeaked out a win, their first win of the season? How do you break this one down?
I think the Bears suck. I think the Bears are not a good football team. I don't think beating up on the Carolina Panthers is indicative of anything. I don't think that beating the Los Angeles Rams at home, especially when you left at least 14 points on the board, is indicative of a good football team. I think that I make this game Chicago -1, so at +2, it's 1.5 +2. I see value in Jacksonville. I hope it gets to a 2.5, where Jacksonville is even at 1.5, of course, it's a clear Wong teaser look where I would be taking the Jacksonville Jaguars. Favorites have done well over in London, though, like you mentioned, the Jaguars are this de facto London team. I don't think that it's going to be a situation that's really going to throw Caleb Williams off. Not like they're, he had a very impressive box score game. But again, when you're beating the Carolina Panthers, I know they had their couple of weeks of looking decent. That is arguably the worst football team in my numbers, the second worst team in the NFL currently. So not impressed by that whatsoever. Again, I make the game Chicago -1, so I am somewhat in line with market where I do think Chicago is worthy of being favored here. But Johnny, I'm not buying stock in Jacksonville because of last week, and I don't think this number is really indicative of what Jacksonville did. I don't think that the market as like overreacted to like barely beating the Colts in a wild game. But I think that we're going to see Jacksonville able to move the football because I do think that this Bears defense is overrated. And on the flip side, I think Caleb Williams should have success because we know the Jaguars defense is not good. But at the same time, we haven't seen Caleb Williams like tear apart teams. Like, yeah, last week you could say was his best game like as a pro, but he's still very low in a lot of these matches. I'll pull up the numbers while you talk a little bit more, Johnny. But I see value in Jacksonville. I like Jacksonville.
I got to be honest, I don't like anything in this game. I understand where you're going. I mean, this is something that I would honestly look in for a live bet potentially. I want to see what the props are. I don't, at least on FanDuel, I haven't seen anything really other than passing props. I want to see maybe like an anytime touchdown for Tank Bigsby, who it looks like he's starting to take over as the 1A in that offense over ETN. It's very, very bizarre. Maybe some Brian Thomas props. BTJ is just completely blowing up right now. I think there's obviously opportunities for guys like DJ Moore who finally got going. But to me, it's more something that I'd be looking to live bet because these are two teams that are far away from really being good. They both have talent, but it's hard to categorize and quantify on a week-to-week basis. You look at Jacksonville, their defense isn't good. Joe Flacco tore them up, 363 tuds. And Chicago's defense, honestly, it is a championship-level defense, but I think there's been times this year where it's not even come close to, and that's a little bit concerning. That's why I think Jacksonville can potentially move the ball this week. I really don't have a good feel right now in terms of a side or even a total.
So the Bears right now, you look at their pass defense, they're first in passing EPA. Again, you have to look at who they played during that time frame. Yes, they did a good job, showing that CJ Stroud, but as we've seen, it's not like the Texans are this amazing offense that at least I expected them to be so far. But the thing is, the Bears are still 16th in neutral pass rate, meaning teams are not afraid to throw the football on them. 25th in explosive pass and 21st in ADOT, meaning teams will move the ball down the field on them. 26th in the middle of the field EPA, meaning they're not doing a great job in the middle of the field. Pressure rate's good at 8, but their run defense, they're 21st in rush EPA, but 24th in explosive rush percentage and 28th in adjusted line yards. Like we saw Chuba Hubbard and co run the football down their throat. Like you said, looking at Tank Bigsby, like this Jacksonville offense, like when they're able to run the football, 6th in rush EPA, 6th explosive rush percentage, like they're a formidable offense. And this is the reason why I'm not out on Jacksonville entirely, because there's been a lot of fluky things that also happened to Jackson. Like we said last week, Jacksonville could have been 2-2 going into that game. It could have been 3-2 now going to this game. And maybe we do it a little bit differently. I don't think I literally have, obviously there's no home field advantage here as we're overseas, but I literally have this in terms of power rankings. I have the Jags at like a 10.5 and the Jacks at 11.5, makes the spread, Chicago -1, but in a game where hopefully again I'm getting like it's a great teaser possibility for me, and I like the Jacksonville Jaguars and a teaser. If I can get Jacks plus 8.5 or even 7.5, I'm like easy leg for me. That's the first thing I'm sweating when I wake up Sunday morning.
I know you like those early morning sweats. I might be going out golfing Sunday morning actually while this game is going on.
Gotta take advantage, brother, in the tri-state area.
Yeah, we're running out of time here to get out on the links.
Yes, sir.
All right. This is one of the best matchups of the week. We have the Commanders and the Ravens. 6.5 points the Ravens are laying at home. We know Lamar Jackson's record against NFC opponents. 20-1 or 21-1 in his career. The only loss, go figures, against Daniel Jones. But we're looking at just a matchup with two really fun offenses. Our guy, Jaden Daniels, my MVP, sitting on a 111-1 MVP ticket. That's my guy. Do you make Washington any sort of test for this Ravens team in terms of trying to pull out not only a cover of 6.5, but a win?
I make the game Baltimore -7.25. So I actually do see value in just laying this with Baltimore. truthfully, again, I'm biased. If you know, I took the Browns last week. I ask anybody who knows me in Parlay Science Discord, I fade Washington when I feel the need to. But because Jaden Daniels makes me so happy, I'm just not even gonna. I don't want to fuck around with that anymore. I'm just not even gonna do it anymore. There's no point. So I do see value in Baltimore. I think back to the Arizona game. I said this last week. Arizona obviously has their variance, but they're also like they clearly like didn't prepare for Washington, and I don't mean like they didn't practice or anything like that. They clearly like kind of sleptwalked through that. They like didn't respect what they were coming into, and Washington absolutely destroyed them. I've seen a lot of talk about how Washington did a great job keeping Kyler in the pocket, and if they can replicate a similar game plan with Lamar, you can hopefully have that success. But like Lamar Jackson, bro, is a different animal. That man is so damn good at football that I don't think it's an apples to orange comparison, even though Kyler Murray can have his good times, Kyler Murray to Lamar Jackson. I'm just looking at this total at 51.5. I know it's high as shit. I know the nature of the NFL this year. Over. We're talking about a bad Baltimore Ravens defense. And like we mentioned, they did a good job against Buffalo because they're more built to slow down like a team that doesn't have a true wide receiver one. And yes, that's true with Washington. And yes, I'm not saying Jaden Daniels is better than Josh Allen, but Jaden Daniels is the second best rusher in football from the quarterback position at this point, besides Lamar Jackson. So I think that Washington, like his ability to pick up these third downs and move the sticks, like I think that this is going to be a as you'd expect, a high scoring affair. The Washington defense has looked good the last 2 weeks, but again, you have to consider who they played. They played literally the worst offensive football by a wide margin in Cleveland, so like they really get credit. And they jumped all over the Cardinals. They did a great job, great game plan. They deserve all the kudos for that. This team is nowhere near as bad as their rankings in terms of defensive efficiency metrics. Like they're much better than they were last year when they were literally the worst I've ever seen in my entire life, but still not good. And you're talking about, again, an entirely different beast in Lamar Jackson. So I would call it the square play, but I'm in. I love the over.
I'm going to go with the Ravens. Something that I tried to get involved in early, like when I first started betting, was really looking at where the public money was. Then as I started getting more experienced, then I'm like, typically it doesn't matter. It's not like I can't always look at the betting splits because public wins sometimes, the sharps win sometimes. It happens. And I've kind of been just relying on my own handicap of determining, whether it's a total or a side or a money line, whatever the case is. This year, though, I've been finding that a lot of the public has been losing. So one of the things that I'm gearing towards this week is seeing how a lot of money is coming on the Commanders, a lot of love. I'm going to go with the Ravens right now at the 6.5 here. I could see money come in on the Commanders early because a lot of people are in love with what Jaden Daniels is doing, and rightfully so. But I would lay the money with the Ravens. I think that's probably the sharper side. Baltimore is a team that I don't really think is as good as they've been playing. I feel like Cincinnati gift wrapped that game for them last week, and we'd be singing a little bit of a different tune to Baltimore. But matchup-wise, I don't really know how the Commanders are going to stop Lamar and Derrick Henry, who I can't believe people actually thought Derrick Henry was going to slow down, by the way. Speaking of, he's minus 360 to score a touchdown this week. It's disgusting. It's malpractice. That is malpractice. That's malpractice. Minus 360 to score a touchdown. I don't think McCaffrey was ever that high at any point last year.
No, I think McCaffrey did touch that.
Did he touch that?
I remember correctly. He did.
So I do like Baltimore. I could see this definitely being a higher scoring game. And listen, I hope the Commanders win because this is a potential big tilt in the MVP race. If Jaden, and the reason why I want the Commanders to not cover but win is because if Jaden Daniels has a solid game, goes into Baltimore and wins, his MVP stock is going nowhere but up. And that is really going to give him some juice. He went into Arizona, beat the Cardinals. He went into Cincinnati, beat the Bengals. If he goes into Baltimore, a hostile place to play, and beats the Ravens, I think that's definitely going to not only strengthen his MVP performance, but it's going to give Washington even more confidence as the season goes on. So my look right now is going to be Ravens -6.5. These touchdowns are interesting. You have Jeremy McNichols plus 125 to score. There's a lot of options. I think this is going to be a very similar game to last week with the Bengals that the Ravens are going to be playing. You could get Lamar and Jaden both plus 135 to score. B-Rob plus 125.
B-Rob is my favorite. B-Rob is my favorite bet.
Yeah. Austin Eckler plus 210 is interesting. I think maybe you could even take a stab at Isaiah Likely at 4-1.
Sure.
So there's going to be a lot of opportunities this week that, I want to get into later in the week. I got to do a little bit more of a dive in terms of player matchups, but I do think there's going to be a lot of props for touchdowns and yards overall, but sidewise, give me Baltimore -6.5 here.
I will say too, last note, Zay Flowers, his rec prop, receiving yards prop right now is 54.5. That's a ladder candidate. I know that we like Washington getting murdered by wide receiver ones. I know Amari Cooper didn't do it last week, even though he still had a pretty good game, but Deshaun Watson was horrific. Again, I had the Browns for 3.5, but obviously rooting for the Commanders a little bit. It's one of those I kind of win no matter what situation. Speaking of, Francisco Lindor just hit a grand.
Oh my God. He just went to Francisco Lindor, went to Pound Town.
Thank you.
Dude,
quick shout. Quick shout.
Live on the show right here at 7:36 p.m. Eastern time. Francisco Lindor in the bottom of the sixth with 1 out just went to Pound Town. Grand slam. Mets are up 4-1 on the Phillies. I know we're doing our baseball podcast Friday, and we just got interrupted right here, but this guy is having a career year. It's unexplainable.
Dude, it's awesome. It's really fun. Again, no Ohtani, he's arguably the MVP. But I can't put him over at Ohtani. I took some Lindor futures for the playoffs because team MVP, hoping the Mets would make a run. That was pretty. But we'll get back on track here. Zay Flowers, though. Amari Cooper did not have the game, but again, we're talking about the worst offense in football by a wide margin. We're talking almost as bad as the Bryce Young-led Panthers. We're talking about a horrible offense in Cleveland. Zay Flowers is shifty. Washington's secondary, not a great tackling unit. I know he's not the figure of a wide receiver one. He's not a Jamar Chase. He's not Marvin Harrison. The guys that clearly torch Washington, no questions asked. But that number is too low for a number one option against this secondary that, yes, has strung together back-to-back good games. It ain't a great secondary still, I promise you that.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our friends down in Tampa Bay as they travel as another 3.5-point favorite at New Orleans. Hurricane is about to hit. If it hasn't made impact already, we wish all my people in Tampa Bay, where I used to live, hope they're safe and, everything's good there as they brace for this hurricane. They traveled to New Orleans yesterday to get away, to get a jump on this travel schedule. Saints aren't going to be with Derek Carr. Looks like Spencer Rattler is going to make the start. Tampa Bay had a really tough loss last Thursday against Atlanta, game that they had in hand. They were controlling. They should have won. But, they got a little bit of a mini bye. Do you like New Orleans here with Spencer Rattler, or would you go with the Buccaneers?
Too much uncertainty, straight up. I like what I saw from Rattler in the preseason. Obviously, I like what we've seen from Clint Kubiak. Everybody likes what they've seen from Kubiak. What's not to like? So I do expect him to do a good job as an offensive coordinator of making the game easy for Rattler. I also think Rattler's athleticism will provide another piece to this offense that's obviously missing with Carr. Obviously, Carr is a good arm talent, is a good quarterback. Emphasis on good, definitely nothing more. Probably arguably less, but not more than good. Johnny, I don't know. I don't know. It's for rookie guy, had character issues throughout college. Obviously, looks to be growing. Again, was impressed with preseason, though it's preseason. So not gonna, go balls to the wall and say, oh my God, I think Rattler's like him. He's the next guy. Can't make those claims. So I don't know. I don't know. A game I'll gladly pass on with obviously so many other games. But in a situation like, the Saints, you could just simply, look at getting 3.5 in the divisional game. Maybe Rattler is, obviously better than serviceable, but how do you know? You don't know. I don't know. Do you know? If you know, you tell me, because I don't know shit.
I think there is a level of unknown. That's why Spencer Rattler, he's got talent, but like you said, there's been a lot of issues with him. But I'm gonna simplify it for you. I picked Tampa Bay preseason to win this division. It's a game that they should have won. They should be 4-1 right now. Atlanta got a lot of help from the referees last Thursday. Tampa's defense is definitely still a problem, but with an extra 10 days, I don't know if Antoine Winfield's officially back yet, but I don't think that that Tampa Bay defense is as bad as they looked on Thursday. Not to mention this New Orleans offense isn't as good as what the Falcons have in terms of potential. I think Tampa Bay wins.
That's arguable. That's arguable. I think you can argue that. I think that the Saints offense is more top heavy. I think Atlanta definitely has more depth and more overall weapons, but you can argue that Olave, Shaheed, Kamara trio is better than the London, Bijan, Darnell Mooney trio.
And Pitts. I don't know. And you got the quarterback.
Pitts has one good game in his NFL career.
No, not at all. But I mean, still, you always got Kyle Pitts out there, but you got Kirk Cousins. It's immediately better than Derek Carr. Carr's okay, but I don't know. I would easily take Atlanta, and not for nothing, Atlanta's defense has honestly been a lot better for the most part than New Orleans. But nevertheless, I'm taking Tampa Bay 3.5. The Bucs have a stretch here where it's not brutal, but it's definitely a spot where they have to capitalize because they're going to have New Orleans this week. Then they come home to play the Ravens. That can be very difficult. That can be a loss. That's a Monday night game. Then they come home to get revenge on the Falcons. Then they go to Kansas City. Then they come home to play the Niners. So New Orleans is right now in this stretch, or Tampa Bay's in this stretch where they got to get this win because this is a win against a guy making his first start. And not for nothing, these divisional games, they stack up when you want to win your own division. So I like New Orleans I like Tampa Bay this week. And I'm interested to see what happens next week with Baltimore. But then they come home and play the Falcons. So, I think this is a spot for Tampa Bay to win and cover. I feel like we're going to see Baker Mayfield and company light them up. But also noteworthy, the Mike Evans Marshawn Lattimore rivalry. It's been a heavyweight fight. Evans either goes off or he does absolutely nothing against Marshawn Lattimore. So that's going to be one to watch.
I have actually do have the numbers in front of me for the recent Evan Lattimore, just to be on it. Talking 2017, he's got, like you said, 6 for 13. Next time, 1 for 13, 5 for 55, 7 for 147, 4 for 86, 0 for 0, 4 for 69, 1 for 2, 4 for 64, 2 for 48. It seems like more recently it's been a little bit more. He's averaging in the 14 games, 3 receptions, 52 yards. So definitely a matchup where there has been some boom, but you could argue that Lattimore is holding his own in that for sure.
Yeah. All right. Next game, Philadelphia was 8.5, moved out to 9.5 home against Cleveland. Eagles off the bye. This would just be the spot where the Browns have a great game, wouldn't it be? I don't know how you don't take Philly. I would lay it with the Eagles. This is a lay the big spot. You lay the big point spread. Philly off a bye. AJ Brown's back. I think, Deshaun Watson, he checked out. He got the bag and he checked out. Listen, it could be square play, but based on what we've seen, how can you back Deshaun Watson right now? This is Philly, one-way traffic all day. Mm-hmm. Give me the Eagles here.
I don't think it's a square play at all. I think it's that simple. I think I wish I got the under 8.5 for a teaser. I wish I moved on that earlier, and probably I wish I did that with Jacksonville. That would have been my best look if it gets back down to 8.5 with some late Browns money. That's what I'm doing. No hesitation, though. I don't expect that to be the case. Cleveland's issues go well beyond Deshaun Watson. Obviously, it's been a cursed franchise forever, and I saw a tweet earlier today. It actually made me laugh. It was like the worst ever for the Browns because this is the first time where the Browns have been absolutely disgusting and horrible, but nobody's felt bad for them because of Deshaun Watson. I thought that was funny, and it's true. Like there is a obvious pressure from ownership when it comes to not benching him. And you see what Stefanski's saying. I think Stefanski is just doing his job as the spokesperson for Andrew Berry and the ownership group there in terms of saying, I can guarantee you if it was Kevin Stefanski's decision, Watson probably wouldn't have started week 1, but it's not his decision. And it's more even so, Johnny, that this Browns, like the offense is broken. It's destroyed. The locker room's lost. And I actually made a wager. So I was looking earlier today, and sometimes FanDuel is wonky on desktop for me, so it hasn't been loading right now. But I took on Monday, it was either Monday morning or Tuesday morning. Today's Wednesday, then it was definitely Monday morning. I took the Browns to have the worst record in football at 7-1. Within an hour, that went down to 5-1. And I haven't even seen that market reopen. Now, that could just be me missing it, but I haven't seen it reopen. And I love that. I'm currently sitting on 2 7-1s, Patriots' worst record, Browns' worst record, unit each. So 6 units, if either of those hit, -2 if none do. You obviously got to risk it to get the biscuit. But this Browns team is as dead as any team I've seen, Johnny. And yes, the Eagles have their issues, this and that. They're off the bye, which I like. I agree with you. This is a big number lay spot or bust. This Browns team, if you think shit's ugly now, I think shit can even get uglier, believe it or not, for them.
Yeah. All right. Indianapolis catching 2.5 at the Tennessee Titans. Titans are off their bye. These matchups in the past have been very entertaining. And I feel like a lot of times we get the Titans Colts in week 17 to decide who's going to the playoffs, those kind of matchups. Low total of 43.5. Not sure yet what the deal is with Anthony Richardson. But I mean, to be honest, bro, like if Richardson doesn't play, it's almost an upgrade. I love Anthony Richardson. I think he can be very good, but there's a lot of development he still needs to do to becoming a great quarterback. There's a lot of mechanical flaws that he has. There's a lot of bad decisions he makes. And, he's certainly full of those wow plays. And quite frankly, those wow plays have kind of gotten him this far. I don't know just yet. And word has it that Michael Pittman's going to be out, candidate for IR with a back injury. Not sure with Jonathan Taylor. I need a little bit more time just to see what the injury report looks like. But I got to say, man, if Joe Flacco is starting again, I might take a shot on the Colts, even with the Titans coming off a bye. But again, I need a little bit more time to see what's good with the injury report.
Same boat as you. JT is obviously huge. I agree with your Richardson takes. I'm not ready to say the jury's out, but at this point, it is unequivocally clear that that Flacco is an upgrade. The market's been interesting. It opened -1, went to 1.5. Now it's sitting 2.5. If this gets to 3, which I don't think is going to happen, to me, it's Indianapolis, not even a question in my mind. That said, I do make the Titans the 1-point favorite that they opened at, so I do agree with them growing as a favorite. Something that I think Will Levis is starting, unless I misread that. I did see that. I think Will Levis will be back, so that's something to monitor. He is still technically questionable from one thing I'm looking at, but obviously Jeffrey Simmons too being questionable is huge. But at this point, Johnny, same way you're saying that Flacco's an upgrade, which I agree with. Rudolph's an upgrade over Levis. And the Titans are content with running the football. I thought on that Monday night game against Miami, which I had Titans money line and I cashed anyway, but I expected a different game script. I expected them to attack the Miami secondary. Obviously, Levis went down very early, so it's unfair to – but even before Levis went down, they were still insistent upon running the football and breaking down that Dolphins' poor defensive front. I think we're in for a similar situation where this Tennessee offense that currently is 30th in neutral pass rate. Everyone's talking about Will Levis and expecting him to be slinging it. He's clearly not good, so that's partially probably why they're not letting him sling it. He's turnover prone. But if it comes down to a Titans just pounding the rock against this Colts rush defense that has been serviceable this year, though it's not like it's amazing. We saw what the Packers did to them in just running the ball, even though they could expect it. And this Titans pass defense has actually been better than anticipated. Yes, it is against you have this new Huntley game in there off no preparation. So you have to always be cognizant of like who people have played and what the context for things were. But at 3, it's Colts all the way. At like a money line situation, though, I like Tennessee.
Okay. It's a fair point. Remains to be seen on the injury report. Another thing that has kind of hit hard is the Houston Texans. They lose their star receiver, Nico Collins, who was on a breakout. He had a good year last year, but he's fully breaking out this year. On a 70-plus yard touchdown against the Bills on Sunday, injures his hamstring. He's on the IR. He's done, which means it should be a lot of Diggs and Tank Dell and two-man sets. Joe Mixon's still up in the air. I mean, Cam Akers and Dare Ogunbowale have been somewhat serviceable. To be honest, though, the Drake May starting for New England is interesting because he brings an element of unknown, athletic guy who made plays at North Carolina. This New England team is not good, though. 7 is a big number, but Nico Collins on this offense shouldn't make that big of a difference where they're not able to go into New England and win with margin. I'm laying Texans -7. I think it should be a good play. I don't really – okay. I think the Houston Texans have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're anything close to the preseason Super Bowl hype that they were getting. I think C.J. Stroud's been up slightly above average. His numbers might stand out as more being one of the top quarterbacks so far this year.
No, his advanced numbers have him, like you said, right in that middle of the pack range, if not lower, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Buffalo honestly could have won that game. I don't know what Sean McDermott was doing at the end. Jacksonville could have won that game. I don't really love Houston right now, but if you are who you've been pawning yourself off to be, this is a spot where you need to go lay the thunder in New England. Drake May could have a great game, and he can will his team to being right there at the end of it. But Houston cannot afford to, dilly-dally and have a look-ahead spot here on Sunday against New England. That's important.
I agree. I 100% agree. Obviously, they're coming off the win against Buffalo. Now, I actually was in your same boat, Johnny. I was questioning McDermott and those decisions that led to that punt. But I actually spoke to a colleague, Judah Fortgang, shout out to Judah, who gave me an alternate perspective where, yeah, you're throwing the football, but you're backed so far back and you're punting. Like, are you rather handing the ball off or are you rather putting the ball in your best player's hands and Josh Allen? So I do give them a little bit more leeway in that game, though I do think that overall, yeah, Buffalo should have done something to win that football game. They should have gotten out of that end zone, should have moved the football, moved the chains. They didn't, and they paid the price. And a 58-yard field goal obviously is also no gimme. The way this year is going, it seems like a freaking gimme because everyone's nailing shit. But still, though, I do agree with your general premise. But when we were talking about the Saints Tampa Bay game, I said I don't know shit, so I don't know shit. Obviously, with Drake May, we don't know anything. But what we do know is this Patriots roster is horrific, terrible, like horrible. My worst team in football. Again, I only took the Browns as not like a hedge to New England, just because like at both 7-1, like I laid out a unit each. Lose 2, win 6. Obviously, the lose 2 is still on the table, but like to me, those are the 2 worst teams in football, and I have them in my back pocket. Like the Patriots, I took 3 weeks ago. The week after, before they played the 49ers, like they were down to plus 350 from plus 700. 6 days later, and I have a plus cash out option. Like there's a reason why the market is so down on this team. They have no separators on offense. Their offensive line is bad. Their defense, they have Christian Gonzalez, and that is quite literally it in terms of like real impact players. And like you said, I agree that this is a spot where the Texans need to flex their muscles. Are they going to be able to is a different question because, like you mentioned, they haven't been able to do so whatsoever. Texas in a teaser obviously is a look for me. I know that these big dogs have been killing it, not just against the spread, straight up winning. What goes up must come down, right, Johnny? These big dogs can't keep winning. Like the parity is obviously higher in the NFL than I would say in recent memory, but at the same time, like we're talking. I'll go to my numbers here with Drake May. I haven't fully adjusted, but pre-Drake May, I did make it 6. So at 7, like I'm okay with laying the 7 with Houston at this point, because I would expect Drake May in his first start to actually be a downgrade of a full point, even though his 9% was good. So I'm with you that it's a Texans or bust. I wouldn't. I don't want to put my money on the unknown. I know that's a way for people to make money betting, especially like early season props. You want to, if you have real strong beliefs, you can do that. But what we do know is that the Patriots suck. So why get involved?
I think something that is also interesting is a Texans first quarter -1.5, minus 104. I do think the first quarter could be interesting because, typically it's if Houston goes down, scores a touchdown first drive, or even gets a field goal, and their defense doesn't allow any points, which is always unknown. I mean, then you can. I think it's an opportunity to kind of ladder some spreads. You can go first quarter at -1.5. You can go first half at -3.5, which, I mean, you'd think that Houston would be able to at least score 2 touchdowns in the first half, which would ultimately mean that they can't allow more than 10 points. And then, you could take the 7. So a couple different ways to attack there in this big spread for a team that honestly hasn't really shown that they are dominant just yet. All right, Denver hosting the Los Angeles Chargers off a bye. Let's give it up for the Denver Broncos, a team that absolutely squatted and took a shit on my face last year for the Circus Survivor, Sean Payton, Russell Wilson. But they played well these last 3 weeks. Bo Nix starting to really develop. Listen, you can make a case that they beat the Raiders, but dude, they beat them convincingly. They went into New Jersey on a rainy Sunday, beat the Jets. They went into Tampa Bay and blew out the Buccaneers. Got to give them some credit, man. This defense playing lights out. Pastor Surtain, he's looking like maybe the best defensive player in the league so far through 5 games. Interesting because I was actually before Sunday looking at like 50-1 Surtain defensive player of the year ticket. And, unfortunately, just because of how biased voters are towards front 7 players, I didn't end up taking, but now he's 11-1. Still think it might be hard for him to win, but nevertheless, he's playing like the best corner in football. Catching only 2.5 at home against the Chargers. I think this is a Broncos spotter pass for me. I think the Broncos are playing very well. I could see Justin Herbert having trouble moving the ball up and down the field in between the 20s all afternoon against this defense. I don't know if I could see the running game. I think J.K. Dobbins has to get like 20-plus carries in this game for them to really have a chance. I just don't know if their defense also is good enough. I think Bo Nix can make enough plays. I think Denver can pull this one out.
So here's what I'll say. I make the game LA -1. So at 2.5, especially at 3, there are some 3s in market, like value on Denver. I feel like it's square. I feel like the Broncos are square because obviously, you mentioned, beat up on the Buccaneers. They beat the Jets. They put together, these really good games in this defense. Again, you have to adjust to opponents and everything, and obviously expect some regression here and there. But we're talking about a defense, Johnny, that's been amazing. We're talking about the 3rd defensive success rate, 3rd in EPA per play, 5th on early down EPA, 3rd in passing EPA, not allowing big plays, 2nd and 7th, respectively, in explosive pass rate and ADOT, and then 4th in pressure rate. They're getting pressure. And then on the run side, 7th in rush EPA. Like, this defense is playing ridiculously well. But do we really think that the Denver Broncos are like, how much? It's like the question then becomes, how much are you really upgrading Denver? Not are you upgrading them, because you of course have to upgrade them. I have upgraded them as well. But how much do you really upgrade Denver? I was a little bit, I want to say, reserved in my Denver upgrading. Yet I still make the game only -1 on LAC's side, showing clear value with Denver. It just feels square, which is just, I can't fully, because of like what we've seen happen with Denver recently. That being said, I'm so out on the Chargers being legitimately good and maybe Maybe I'm wrong because the market has shown went from 2.5 to 3, back to 2.5. So clearly some support for Denver at 3, and there clearly was some early support at LAC minus 2.5. It could simply be that field goal game either way, which we see so often in the NFL, especially in these divisional games, these low-scoring offenses that cannot win by margin. So I agree it's Denver or pass. But if somehow LAC, but it does feel square, but my numbers agree. And I guess I could leave it at that because I haven't played it, but something about it, Johnny, just feels a little square.
I got to be honest, though. My favorite look might be the under. It's low as hell. It's 35.5. But you look at it like on paper, these are the best 2 scoring defenses in football. Chargers are allowing the least, 12.7 points per game. But then you look at who they played, and it's not that impressive. And then kind of the same thing with the Broncos, who was allowing just under 15 points. I think I'm not even regarding the numbers. I just don't think these 2 offenses are very good. I think Denver's defense is very good right now. But I mean, really, outside of the Vegas game, you look at it. It was a 19-point total against the Jets. It was 33 against the Bucs. It was 19 against Steelers. It was 46 against Seattle. I mean, there was 2 safeties, for Christ's sake. So that's obviously something that isn't repeatable. But then you look at the Chargers, 32 against the Raiders, 29 against the Panthers, 30 against the Steelers, 27 against the Chiefs. So I think, honestly, the under might be the best look because 35.5 on paper seems low, but there's a reason why these totals are so low. I feel like a lot of people, when they see these such low totals, are like, God damn, that can't go under, can it? I'm going to take the over. I'm trying to think the opposite way there because I absolutely see a path where there's a lot of running. LA doesn't have much success through the air. Their way to move the ball and whole time of possession is getting Dobbins and Edwards on the ground moving. And Bo Nix and these Broncos on offense, they take long drives. There's not a lot of quick strike in this Denver offense. So I think there's going to be heavy ground attacks on both sides with good defense. So under 35.5 is actually my best look in this game.
I like how you broke that down. I do a lot.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. All right, let's go to Pittsburgh. Steelers lost a heartbreaker, 4th down. Dak Prescott delivered for his first time in his life. The Steelers kind of coming back down to earth a little bit, but they're laying 3 at the Raiders. I got to be honest, bro. Like, I'm so sick of the Raiders. I'm tired of them. Yeah, they knocked me out in Survivor because for the first time in their life, they came back from 10 points in the 4th quarter at the Ravens. I think the Steelers are pass look for me. Vegas is probably missing Devontae Adams again. I don't know how much Pittsburgh's going to be able to score offensively. Raiders, they haven't really committed to a quarterback. I don't know if it's going to be is it AOC? Okay. Yeah. It's uninspiring. Again, another game where I'd probably look to the low total. I'm probably not going to play either side, but if I was going to, I would play I'd play Pittsburgh -3.
Yeah, and with the adjustment, because I do see a downgrade in O'Connell, I do make it then Pittsburgh minus 2.5. So I do see value with LV at 3. Pittsburgh, not a team built to win by margin whatsoever for obvious reasons. But Las Vegas, this is so I think you talked about this last week, Johnny. Like, they already got over the game of like Devontae Adams playing, like the diva. He didn't play that first game. We thought maybe next week they would play better because it's week 2 without him. That they got to get over his shit. Like, he might even be a Las Vegas Raider by the time this game kicks off on Sunday with all the trade rumors and everything going on. So that's honestly. And it seems weird to say, but it's just true. Like, that's honestly better for the Raiders to not have Devontae Adams in the building anymore. He's a distraction. He doesn't give a fuck. He's probably bringing down the vibe in the locker room. So, like, why keep that, like, cancerous kind of person around? Like, it's not a matter of, like, if he gets traded at this point. It's really when. And realistically, like I said, it could be even before this game kicks off. So, I'm not putting my money on the Las Vegas Raiders. I know I bet teams, not numbers. I do my best. I bet numbers, not teams, excuse me. I do my best to do so. But, like, sometimes when you really look at these games, you either hold your nose and just bet your numbers and say whatever, or you just pass. I'm not laying 3 with Pittsburgh against anybody because they don't win by margin and they're not built to, and I'm not betting the Raiders. So I would look at the under 2. And the only thing that I think could, not the only thing, but the biggest thing that could screw it would be a defensive score or 2 there.
Yeah, definitely. We know that's capable here. All right, Atlanta Falcons, 4:00 window at Carolina, 6.5. Oof, all right, 46.5 point total. Looks like that's teetering towards the 47-point margin. I gotta be honest, this seems like an Atlanta letdown spot. Atlanta, bro. I started being a Falcons fan in like 2003. So there's no bias on my handicaps. I think people don't truly understand the Atlanta Falcons and their ways. They are the most bizarre team in the NFL. I think there's a lot of hype surrounding the win that they had, a win that they should not have had. Really, like they kind of got lucky. They've been lucky this year. They shouldn't have won against the Eagles. You can make a case they shouldn't have won against New Orleans. I mean, honestly, they had 2 defensive / special team scores. They should not have won against Tampa Bay. That's what it is. That's the truth. They're going to Carolina, a team that obviously is not good, but they are for the most part feisty. The Panthers at home played a really good game against Cincinnati. And Atlanta just laying 6.5 points seems a little bit too much. I probably won't bet anything in this game, but I would actually look at laying it with Carolina if I was going to bet something.
So I literally went on a rant about how I think the Panthers are the second worst team in football, and I still make this game only Atlanta -5. So I see clear value on the Carolina Panthers. I'm in the same exact boat as you are. And this is something just some game for people to consider, right? Like, end of the day, like, you make your numbers, market makes their numbers. Yes, you should abide by the market's numbers because they're taking, $200,000, max bets, and it's football, it's sharp. You have all week to bend these numbers to shape. Like, yes, you do defer to the market, especially as the season continues. But when I have a situation like this where, like, I know how bad Carolina is, and I'm very confident in how bad I think Carolina is. Like, that's something you have to die on some hills, right? Or stand on some tables and down your chest. If you're wrong, you admit it, you learn, you move on. And that's how life should be taken, not just in gambling and everything. That said, maybe I'm off with my Falcon number. I have the Falcons as a better than average team. Like, I think the Falcons are decent. They're better than average according to my ratings, but I still only make the number 5. So if I get to see a 7, it's a no hesitation. But at 6.5, still definitely looking at Carolina.
Yeah, completely agree. I am curious to see if this is going to get bigger, if this is going to get bet up. Right now it's looking like Carolina's taking a little bit more money. This might get back down to 6.
Yeah, it's getting
but
closer.
You never know. There could be a big bet coming in that pushes this thing out to 7. I'd probably. Honestly, I'm not feeling laying with the Falcons. I just don't know. Atlanta, it really isn't that good. They really, really aren't. I just think that laying this many points, I probably, to tell you the truth, wouldn't want to lay more than like 5 points with them. I think like your model, like, I probably wouldn't want to lay more than 5. So, if it's anything above 5, I would definitely look at Carolina. I mean, listen, I could be totally wrong. They can get blown out of the gym. It's definitely possible. But, these are these grimy spots that we have to try and look at. And we've seen a lot of these grimy spots go in favor of the underdog, where it's like, how can I bet this team? Like, even though they're getting 6 points, how can I bet so-and-so? They're so bad. Like, shit happens, dude. Shit happens.
Especially in division.
This is the game I am most 1A, 1B with Washington, Baltimore. Detroit, -3 at Dallas off a bye. This is a motherfucking Lions 25-unit max play. Dan Campbell off the bye. is a Savage. They got Frank Ragnow back. Dallas is not good. This is Detroit getting revenge on the Cowboys last year after that ridiculous call with the offensive lineman catching a touchdown. 3 points is not enough. Honestly, I think the Lions win with margin here. I think CeeDee Lamb can have a good game. I think him and Dak Prescott are going to squash whatever beef they had against Pittsburgh. But I think this is going to be a Detroit game. This is a lot of props. This is a Montgomery tutty. This might be a Gibbs tutty. This might be a motherfucking Amon-Ra tutty. Jameson Williams might get in the end zone. I think Detroit's going to put up a 30 bean all the way with the Lions. I'm going to hammer this bitch.
So I see it. I make the game 3, so nothing that I'm dying to. Even at like 3.5, obviously, would show value in Dallas. There are some not really 3.5s out there, mostly 3s. I'm looking. Obviously, these things change instantaneously, as we know. So always make sure you're checking the market when you're doing things. But Johnny, like the thing about the Cowboys and why I took Pittsburgh last week, and obviously, got burnt. But when there's a team that can really focus on CeeDee Lamb, this Dallas Cowboys team is dead in the water. The Detroit Lions are not that team. The Detroit Lions are not a team that can really wipe out, your best, especially wide receiver, and then make everybody else beat you. Like CeeDee Lamb is still going to run rampant on this Lions defense. I am not nearly as opinionated as you are in terms of the Lions, nor am I like fading you, because I'm not betting Dallas. Like I don't think Dallas is good even after like beating Pittsburgh again, especially in the fashion they did. That's not impressive to me. Like Dallas to me is still average, if not slightly below average. And my ratings, they're exactly at what like an average football team is. So, and Detroit, I've downgraded, I've gone back and forth on Detroit. I think that the buy is priced into this at this point. Because pre-buy, I did make it 2.5, and with buy, assuming a half point, if that's probably being even like probably on the higher side, getting me to 3. So I think we're actually in for a better football game than you're anticipating, simply also because, again, when people can't slow down CeeDee, this Dallas team is the entire complexion of the Cowboys is different. And Detroit is not a team that I think, they have the more time, so maybe they can, but no, a team that can't shut down CeeDee is a team that can struggle. And it's so crazy putting so much stock in one player, but he is that good, and the rest of that offense is that bad.
No, I completely get it. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to get his first 100-yard game. You look at all the number ones that Detroit's faced, all of them went for 100 yards except for Marv, and he went for 5 for 61 with the tutty. I think if you're looking to bet, this is a Lamb ladder. There's no props out just yet, but CeeDee Lamb is going to be a ladder candidate this week. This is a perfect matchup. There was a little rift between him and Dak on the sidelines Sunday night. I think that gets squashed. I like Lamb probably up to 120 yards. I would take a shot on a sprinkle at 120, definitely 110, 100 for sure. Touchdown for Lamb. I think Lamb has a big game. So I see your point. I honestly might be over-exaggerating this a little bit, but I love Detroit in this spot. I really do. Detroit is, I'm pretty sure they're typically strong off of their bye week. They're getting their center back, which is a huge, huge piece. Frank Ragnow is one of the best offensive linemen in football. He's huge with what they do in the run game. I just don't know if Dallas is going to be able to control this. There's a big difference between shutting down the Pittsburgh Steelers offense that is, for the most part, not even built to score 20 points. Detroit doing what they want on this Dallas defense. It is not the same defense as last year. It's not.
No, again, it comes down to also how they play at the end of the day. Not how, that was a little too generic, but more so, how teams are attacking on offense. And again, so much talk about, Jared Goff the last couple of years, obviously Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, this team is good in there. Detroit still 27th in neutral pass rate. For the last 3 years, so much talk about Goff, and yes, he almost got them to a Super Bowl. But that being said, end of the day, gun to head, Dan Campbell and Phil Johnson still don't even trust their quarterback. So it's hard to really, like, for me at least at times. Like, obviously, again, I bet Seattle against Detroit. I got burnt. They won by margin there, but that was at home. I know this still is indoors and turf, so it doesn't hurt Goff in those facets. But I'm not convicted either way. I see where you're coming from, but I don't know that Detroit, especially how they run the ball, and Dallas is susceptible to the run more frequently, that it's a game where they're going to be creating so many big plays to win by a margin.
That's why they play the game, E. We'll see.
So,
another game that they're going to play is Sunday Night Football. Bengals -3.5 at the New York Giants. Malik Neighbors, I think, is supposed to be back, dealing with a concussion. Giants had a big win at Seattle. This could be an interesting spot, a bit of a letdown. Right now, the 3.5 is trending -118 towards the Giants, which means the indication is this is close to getting to a 3. Cincinnati blew that game. They should have won. Joe Burrow played one of the best football games we're probably going to see a quarterback play all year. Makes one mistake, a ball he should have probably threw late when they were up. Evan McPherson wasn't really his fault. It was a bad snap, bad holds, and Baltimore ends up goes and win. The Bengals can score, Eric. We know that. Their defense is so bad, and it's bizarre because Lou Anarumo was supposed to be a good coach. This is a guy that's supposed to, who had a really strong year last year building up that defense. This was supposed to be his audition for a head coaching job next year. Hasn't materialized. The Giants, I can see them move the ball. If Malik Neighbors goes, I like the Malik Neighbors props for sure. I think Malik Neighbors definitely catches, probably yards, touchdowns, whatever. Because I just don't know if we're going to see the Bengals get enough traction to stop them. But Cincinnati is 1-4 now. They're in a position where their schedule is not that bad the rest of the way. It's not. They have a couple tough games, but there is opportunity for the Bengals to get going. They're at the Giants, and they're at the Browns, and they're home to the Eagles, then home to the Raiders. Then they're at the Ravens for a rematch. Then they're at the Chargers. Then they're home to the Steelers, at the Cowboys, at the Titans, home to the Browns, Broncos, at Steelers. These are the kind of games they have to win if they want to start making that playoff push. They cannot lose to the Giants. Listen, the 3.5, you know how I feel about that. I'd probably wait on that. I like the Bengals in this spot for a bounce back because if you can't win this game, what does that say about you? That you can't go into New Jersey on a Sunday night and beat the Giants. Yes, it's on the road. Yes, Giants playing with a little bit of swag. I like the Bengals here. I'm going to wait
Giants
to see
also,
if it's 3, though.
Of course. The Giants also coming back from Seattle. NFL did do them a solid by making this a Sunday night. If they were playing 1 p.m. after, obviously traveling back from Seattle, there are fatigue things that have been shown throughout the course of the NFL from traveling so far. This is what I think it comes down to, Johnny. I'm asking you, but I'm speaking generally, but I want your answer. Do you think the Giants' offense is just decent? It's good. Obviously Malik Neighbors adds another element he plays, but based on what we saw, Seattle, the question then becomes: is Seattle's defense overrated, or is the Giants' offense just underrated? Obviously, we move forward. You have your opinions, but at this point, Johnny, do you think the Giants' offense is maybe underrated?
With Malik Neighbors on a scale of 1 to 32, I'd probably put them in the low 20s in terms of best offenses. I still put them bottom tier, and that's with Malik Neighbors. Without Malik Neighbors, I don't really, I don't think they're much better than the 25th best offense. I could say with Neighbors, they're 20, 21. I think that the fact is, when you're playing a defense that has, like you said, lost so many of your stars, and now you're going to deal with one that's just not good, that's going to boost you up a little bit, and it's going to allow you to do enough. But, this is not an offense that should be able to score even 23 points on this Bengals defense. On paper, it shouldn't be. But because how bad they are, they might be. But the issue now becomes, what does Cincinnati do on offense? If they keep Joe Burrow upright, which could be a challenge against Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns, who have looked very good so far, I think Jamar Chase and company are going to gut them.
So the thing about Cincinnati, yes, they're 1-4. Obviously, week 1, you could kind of throw away the whole Jamar Chase thing, no T. Higgins. Then T. Higgins week 2 comes back. The issue is never the offense with Cincinnati. Like Joe Burrow, if you want to bet, you should be looking at Joe Burrow MVP odds, because if he makes this ridiculous comeback, now is the best you're going to get him, because he's played freaking amazing.
Which we talked about off air. Mm-hmm. Burrow 22-1, which I think me and you would both agree it's a little too that's too short. That should be a little bit bigger considering your position. Yes. Like I don't want to take 22-1, but when you look at the MVP odds, that's probably the best number right now to bet.
I agree. That yes, I 100% agree. We talked off air, and that's why I'm bringing that into this fold, because I know, like you just of course outlined the Bengals defense, but the problem with the Bengals defense is more that they're just not that talented. Their defensive line is weak. Their secondary is weak. Like they're just not like a overall. They don't have great players on that side of the football, which is what leads to them being so bad. And this is going to be a week where I'm going to learn so much about my own personal numbers, because again, I only make this game Cincinnati -2.5 with clear value on New York. All the games that I've shown clear value on are all hold your nose, ugly ass games that I'm not dying to bet on, which is why I haven't even pulled trigger considering my numbers on anything yet. I'm naked. I got 0 bets in so far for this week. But like I just said, I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to learn if my numbers so far this week were correct and I missed out on some winners, which I'm okay with because it's a learning process. Everything is. I'd rather have better numbers for the rest of the season and for the rest of my life than, miss out on a couple units of profit in week 6 of this NFL season. And I'm curious to learn and see, because I make this game only Cincinnati -2.5. I think the Giants offense is probably a little bit better than that high or low 20s that you were talking about. I think it's probably closer to 18, 19. Just semantics, as obviously it's not a huge difference there, but this Bengals defense can't stop a nosebleed. I think the Giants can move the football, and 3.5 in a game that I think the Bengals are a team that can win by margin. So if you were to do what you were like to do and lay the 3.5, I think it makes sense here. But my numbers show value on New York. Again, no units placed, no actual place, the parlay science, no anything. So I am just kind of talking here, but we'll learn and we'll recap next week, because I obviously take track of closing line, what I bet, and how my numbers, did compare to the market and what happened in the game with commentary. Like, for example, obviously I made Thursday night last week. I had Tampa Bay. I loved them. They lost, but they had the interception with less than a minute and a half left. Punt. Kirk gets the field goal. They get the coin toss to win. That
fluky.
loss,
it's fluky stuff.
Exactly. The handicap was not off. The numbers weren't off.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
we'll see.
Make a compelling argument there. Definitely. So we will see. Sunday night, interesting. Last one. We're gonna go MetLife, back-to-back Sunday night, Monday night. Jets just fired Robert Saleh, catching a little bit of steam here. This was a field goal line pre-Saleh firing. Jets are catching 2.5 at home against Buffalo. Bills lost 2 in a row. Jets have lost 2 in a row or 3 in a row. No, they lost 2 in a row. So both teams really need a win. And honestly, this can go a long way in setting up the division race in a division that seems like right now nobody wants to win. I'm actually very curious about this. I put out a tweet the other day. There's been 7 Monday night games played so far through the first 5 weeks. 5 of the 7 have seen the winner win by at least 13 or more points. But there's been 2 winners that have been at least 5.5 point underdogs. Make of that what you will. Do we think the Jets are going to pull this one off after firing Robert Saleh?
So like I mentioned earlier in the show, there is a correlation. Mets just win, by the way.
That's just won 102 from Diaz.
Clap it up, clap it up. Had the Mets money line there, so
good for you.
Yeah, very nice. Back to the matter at hand, though. There is something to be said, and if you listen to this show or anything I put out content-wise, in really the last 4 years, I hated Robert Saleh. I thought he was a terrible coach. I see, obviously he's not the only issue there, but I don't think he's a scapegoat. I think he was bad at his job. The whole handling and, escorting him out with security, that's a whole other issue, whatever. But I actually got a text from my cousin yesterday or whenever they broke the news saying, you were right 3 Thanksgivings ago when you were telling me that the Jets should probably get rid of Saleh because it was all going to go to shit anyway. And here we are. But there is definitely going to be a bump just in terms of the locker room. This team needs this win more than anything. I make the game 2.5, so I'm mad I missed that 3 because I see clear value with the Jets at 3. And I think the Jets can certainly win this game outright. Buffalo is definitely the higher team of my ratings, again, only making 2.5 in MetLife. But with the bump of the new head coach and the must-win aspect for New York over Buffalo, I still think Buffalo is one of the best teams in football, of course. But Johnny, I like to not like the Jets, but I like the Jets here.
I think personally, right now, I would side with the Jets. The new coach thing kind of like the fire under everybody's ass shows that everybody is replaceable. And to be honest, Buffalo is a team that I was not high on. You know that. I did not like Buffalo. I thought there was a lot of holes on this roster. And now there's a possibility Khalil Shakir might be out, which means, there's going to be a thin receiving core yet again. I don't know if the Buffalo Bills are a team that is going to be anything close to what they've been in the past. I've been firm in saying I thought their Super Bowl window is well closed. I think it's closed. I think people will be like, "Oh, it's open because Josh Allen." That's a matter of opinion. I don't think this roster is that good. I think it's one of the better rosters in football, but to the point where Buffalo used to be this relatively dominant team that's always in the conversation to be in the Super Bowl contention. I don't see that. I actually had the Jets as a team that was going to be able to make a run in the playoffs. And listen, early season struggles are just early season struggles. It's not like the New York Jets are out of it and they have no hope. And, being in this area, living in this area, it's a lot of doom and gloom. One win, you win 1 week, oh, that's it. We're going to the Super Bowl, book it. You lose 1 week, oh, this team sucks. Let's get ready for the draft. That's how they are. I still think there's a lot of promise on this team. I think now with Jeff Ulbrich stepping in, former Falcons coach, by the way, there's going to be a sense of urgency. There's going to be a sense of, team defining, character building that's going to go on. I think they need to, honestly get a little bit more in terms of stop doing dumb shit. They don't take the 3 points in London last week. That ends up coming back to bite them. But, you look at the losses also, Eric. They lost to the Niners in San Francisco. They lose to the Vikings in London. And, the Broncos, that was a bad loss. But, I'm not sitting here writing them off because I do think the Jets have a lot of talent. I think it's a good buy low spot on them right now. And I actually had them winning the division over Buffalo. So I would side with the Jets here. Sorry for the rant.
No, I love it. I like what you were saying. I like the angles you were looking at. I disagree with Buffalo's Super Bowl window being closed. And it is as simple as if Josh Allen is in town, you can build something out of that. But no Khalil Shakir is going to be tough. And it's just I agree that now with the Jets, there is it's now or never for them to wake up. If the firing of the coach, whether or not he was well liked, I obviously have no clue. It seems like he was, but genuinely, what do I know? I have no intel on one Jets drive, but this has to be the spark. But at the same time, you can't discredit how bad this offense has been. Like the Jets' whole shtick was that their defense was elite, which we know that's just fake news, and that Aaron Rodgers and having a quarterback would help this team win and would propel them. So far, has been fake news. So it is still like a wait and see. But with that being said, the Bills, as I do think they're very good, are not a juggernaut. And like again, I'm right on number. If I see a 3, I like the Jets, and I would not be surprised to see the Jets win this one outright and give their fan base some more false hope like they love to do.
Definitely a look. Anytime touchdown looks, there's not every game has them. So I don't feel it's definitely fair to start just rattling them off because there's a lot of games that I'm going to be looking at that we don't have lines yet. I don't know if you have anything early, like we talked about, maybe CeeDee Lamb, maybe Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson, Lamar,
Powers. I love
Powers.
The obviously, like you said, we talked about a lot of like CeeDee Lamb, huge. A lot of people in that Lions. I love David Montgomery, of course, but again, these are going to be like really tough to bet. Not tough to bet, but like you're going to have to pay some juice on a touchdown, which I don't know. They've been hit like some of these juicier, chalkier guys. Like they've been that way because they have been scoring for whatever that's worth.
All right, Johnny V's teaser of the week. I've been honestly not very good with it. Hopefully this can deliver. The Arizona plus 11.5, Texans -1. I'll be looking to hammer that. Eric, anything else that we should be keeping our eyes on?
I think something interesting to take a look at. I know you have the Jaden MVP. Is the Jaden not just offensive rookie of the year, but straight up offensive player of the year? It's an award that's generally dominated by the wide receivers, running backs of the world. Though the only person right now that probably has that argument is Jamar Chase, who could probably put up another big game. That's probably the biggest competition. But at about 25-1, considering the MVP landscape, like you said, huge game here with Lamar. He's obviously in the mix. Joe Burrow's obviously in the mix with another win or two. Mahomes with the record is always going to be in the mix despite statistically not looking like amazing. So I think at that price, a Jaden Daniels
45-1. 45-1, by the way.
I think that's worth 100% worth a look because of the lack of the field being so good and his unique play style with the running and the fact that he's going to put up these insane scrimmage yard numbers, including the rushing, that he could be a guy to take home 2 awards, not just rookie of the year, but literally offensive player of the year.
It happens. He's got to pick up the passing touchdowns. It's not all his fault. They've gotten down to the 1 yard line 3 times last week, and it was all running backs punching it in. So I mean, it kind of comes with it. But I'm of the belief if Jaden Daniels has 4,500 total yards and he has like 35 total touchdowns, he's going to definitely have a case if the Commanders are not just a playoff team, but win the division. I think
they fully are going to do at this point.
Yeah, which I think is definitely possible. I'll say this: CJ Stroud right now, 6-1 for Stroud. I wouldn't bet. I think Stroud is good, but he hasn't done anything that's wowed me. He hasn't really played that well. Patrick Mahomes does not play well at all. It's simply off reputation and thought that he might just have a great statistical season that he's the favorite at plus 230. Lamar at 650 is interesting, but to be honest, Lamar preseason was less than 20-1. I don't think, unless there's very unlikely circumstances that everybody else sucks, that Lamar is going to win MVP back-to-back years. He didn't deserve to win it last year. I'll die on that hill. That was a gift. He should have been maybe the 3rd player to win it behind McCaffrey and Josh Allen. Allen right now, definitely not MVP caliber with the way his team is performing. Statistically, he's got 10 total scores to no turnovers, but I mean, I don't know. Allen 9-1 is worth a look, I suppose. Daniels 11-1, the value's gone. Darnold, I don't think is going to win at 12-1. Brock Purdy 19-1. I mean, bro, you can have 10. If he didn't win it last year, I just don't think he's going to win it this year. You can have 10 offensive player all pros on your team and win. Goff 22-1. I just don't know his numbers are going to be good enough. Cousins, team's not going to be good enough. His numbers won't be where they need to be. Burrow 22-1 is really it. Burrow 22-1 is probably the best bang for your buck because they have winnable games. If the Bengals get themselves to like 3-4, 4-4 over these next 3 weeks, which is very doable, Burrow's numbers right now are probably the best in terms of overall passing in the NFL. That's where I'd leave it. Like the laters, like Prescott 25-1, no. Hurts 28-1, probably not. Murray 30-1, no. Baker Mayfield 40-1, maybe worth like a little sprinkle of pixie dust. Jordan Love 45-1, missed a couple games, probably going to be tough. And then everybody else after that, no good. I mean, Rodgers 65-1 if you want to get frisky. If Rodgers goes on a run and they get Devontae Adams, but at this point, it's going to be hard for Rodgers to win. So really, it's Joe Burrow right now as your best look here.
I agree. I do agree.
Yeah. Well, I know we ran long today, so we really appreciate everybody for hanging around. Don't forget to catch us. We're going to be back here on Friday talking a little bit of MLB playoffs. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back on Friday. Eric, always appreciate your time. And let's go Padres tonight. Let's get this done, Padres. Let's go.
Let's go Friar Nation.
Friar Nation. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Best of luck this week. We'll see you Friday.